Good evening. Welcome to the ShadowTrader Video Weekly for Sunday, May 20th, 2018. Good to be back with you once again on this weekly update. S&Ps did exactly what was expected. If you recall in the last week's video I was saying there would be a short right at the 61.8 retracement, and that occurred on Monday, and I said we would probably go down to the 50% retracement, and looks like that was actually very true. We've actually ping-ponged right between those levels. We made the move from the 60 to the 51.8, and since then we have just kind of gone a whole lot of nowhere, where prices have just kind of moseyed around in here in between this level. So I think this is the possibility of a consolidation before a breakout. So we will see. That would probably favor a move to the upside, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, because I'm thinking that the fly in the ointment might be the overextension of the Russell. You can clearly see here the way the Russell trades, that when it gets too far in one direction, obviously all prices pull back when they go too far in one direction, but the Russell has a reputation for pulling back deep when it gets too far in one direction. What the small caps do is they tend to over-exaggerate all moves. They over-exaggerate moves to the upside, and then they over-exaggerate moves to the downside. So sometimes they're, it's kind of a bigger move. So this really could kind of crash a bit deeper. I mean, certainly when you look at the upside, obviously the S&P is nowhere near the all-time high, and yet this is broken out to all-time highs. So if by some reason we get a pullback here below this line, I would be watching this prior high very, very closely in this week's trade, and that could kind of pull the market down. If the Russell was to have a look above and fail, come back through the prior all-time high and come back into range, that would put a damper on any type of rally that might be brewing in the S&P or the Dow. All right, let's take a brief look at market profile here if we could. There's just a couple little nuances I want to point out that have happened this week. This is our S&P here. First thing I want to mention is that you have a very, very prominent point of control in Friday's distribution. So please carry that forward. Remember, the more prominent or wide this area is, which is where the fairest price is to do business, you can think of that also as simply the widest area in the profile where the most letters have printed. The wider that area is, the higher the odds are of it being revisited. So again, we want to carry that level forward. Going into this week, there's actually three levels there, obviously, but it's the 27.14, 50 to 27.15, or whatever these are exactly, the exact ticks, 27.15 down to 27.14.50, and carry those forward because they do have a higher odds of being retraced. Other than that, the high was poor on Friday. There was no excess on Friday, so there could be some longs trapped there, but the lows are consistently the same. Look at these two areas here on Wednesday and Thursday, identical, and here we have a look below and fail. Correct, where we have a spike low below, and then we don't sell off. We don't find any new sellers below it, and look at how low the volume was, low taper here. So what does this really tell us? There's just a lot of short-term trade going on here as prices kind of balance. I found it interesting also that this low ties in perfectly with this area here. Notice that it's exactly half back, and notice how wide all the overnight action is here. So you have a lot of value in this overnight section, and this profile here is relatively beefy in this area. So you're really just seeing prices act very, very mechanically and very, very visually, bouncing off of nuanced profile levels. So all this is just confirming the consolidation. At the same time, of course, when you are faced with such a situation, value is almost always overlapping, and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday have certainly been that. There's been almost no move in value. So a shift in tone and bias will happen only when there is a change in value, not just price. So this is a perfect example here. You have a change in price but not value, and by the end of the day nothing happens and value stays up here. So value really didn't move. Notice that it's overlapping with this one, right? And this one is completely overlapping with this one, right? So value hasn't really changed. All right. In last week's video, I gave you a few trade ideas, none of which have panned out yet, except for the S&P. If anybody shorted the S&P on the 61.8 retracement, that worked out well for you. But other than that, a lot of the other stocks that I've mentioned are still in the same holding patterns that we were then. I'm going to start with Booking.com because I'm still very, very interested in it. eventually breaking into this box. There's no trade here as of yet, but I found it interesting and noteworthy. I wanted to mention it in the video that today, this is being recorded on Friday, it made its fourth touch at the 2100. The stock closed pretty strong in Thursday's action, and Friday it actually opened up right at the 2098 or whatever this is. It's the exact number is 2098.43 is this high, and notice that that gave us our fourth touch. So we have one here, two, which was just shy of it, but I still consider that a touch because it came very, very close. Here's three that came right to it, and then Friday right to it again. So there's your important line in the sand, is the 2100, and price breaking up over that area. I would say if we have a strong market, I wouldn't do that in a weak market, but if the market shows signs it's moving up, the stock has a very good chance of filling this gap up to 2160. So look for that. Okay. Beyond that, a lot of the usual suspects are showing really, really tight ranges, which is bullish. Notice Facebook here. It really hasn't moved after this move up here into the 188 area. I'm still thinking Facebook could make the push to 200. Of course, we need to have a market that doesn't break down, that moves forward for that. ISRG is another one that I mentioned that I've been looking at. That actually closed pretty strongly on Friday, pretty impressive close on Friday, where stock kind of climbed into the close as the major averages kind of pulled off into the close. It was an options expiry day. It was the third Friday of the month, so I don't put a lot of stock into a lot of these moves, but the stock is just moving sideways, and again, looking for the possible move here to retest the high and then move up to the 500 level. That is ISRG. BABA is another one that has a very, very tight range. Any of these names will work if the market turns back to the upside. Notice the clean move up here. That's the flagpole, and here's the flag. Pretty simple, and you're targeting these prior highs up in here on BABA. And also Apple is very, very similar. Obviously, these are just names everybody knows. That has almost the same pattern. And last but not least, Netflix is showing a very, very sort of high and tight pattern up into here. All right. Now, last but not least, I want to leave you with a pairs trade idea, and then I want to give you a little caveat on some of these trades that I think will help you in the week ahead. ShadowTrader, which is the favorite pairs trade of myself and the Southern gentleman Tom Cook. Big props to him for helming that advisory as well as he has. This is coming into a buy point probably this week. There has been a notable downtrend here. So yes, obviously the pairs trade actually favors the short side, but it doesn't really matter because you can see this just trades in this perfect barcode formation. And I'm actually looking for an entry somewhere here in the negative 50 cent area, and then looking for a move back to the mean up here. All right, so that is on my radar for an entry next week. All right, last but not least, I leave you with these FANG stocks that I believe are going to be a great barometer of whether this market is going to stay strong or not. Obviously, if these stocks break down and we see the Russell come in, that will tell you that it is risk off. And I say that specifically because these stocks are all acting right now as if it's risk on. All of the names that I mentioned, which are very popular, very known, considered market bellwethers, FAANG, et cetera, they're all sitting up with this very high and tight pattern and are not coming in at all. That doesn't mean that they have to break out to the upside. These patterns can and do fail, and if they do, it will tell us a lot about the state of this market. On behalf of myself and the entire ShadowTrader team here in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as always, I wish you good trading and good night.